There is something happening right now, not outside of you, not in the world's noise, not in the conversations happening behind closed doors, not in the whispers that found their way to your ears when you were not looking for them. Something is happening within you, a settling, a clarifying, the way a snow globe finally stills after being shaken, and what was obscured by the swirling chaos slowly, inevitably, becomes visible again. You have felt it, haven't you? That quiet knowing that something is shifting, that the fog you have been walking through, the fog of confusion, of mislabeling, of being seen through lenses that were never ground to your prescription, that fog is beginning to lift, and underneath it, there you are, exactly as you always were. For a long time, the narrative was not yours to write. That is the part nobody tells you about being chosen, that the very nature of your assignment makes you a target for misrepresentation, that the light you carry casts shadows that others sometimes mistake for the whole of you, that the silence you kept in dignity was read as guilt by those who did not understand that some truths are too sacred to defend in public. You stayed quiet, not because you had nothing to say, but because something in you, that deep, ancient, knowing part of you that has survived more than this lifetime, understood that not every courtroom deserves your testimony, that not every accusation requires your response, that sometimes the most powerful thing a soul can do is be still while God does the work of revealing, and God has been working quietly, precisely, without rush and without error. What is being uncovered right now in your life is not an accident. It is not random timing. It is not coincidence that clarity is arriving in this particular season, after this particular storm, following this particular stretch of being misunderstood. There is a divine choreography to revelation. Truth does not emerge on human schedules. It does not respond to pressure, campaigns, or demands, or the impatience of those who wanted the story settled before it was fully told. Truth moves on its own timeline, and its timeline is always, always perfect. The confusion that surrounded you served a purpose, not a cruel one, not a punishing one, but the kind of purpose that only becomes visible in hindsight, the way a scar only reveals the depth of a healing after the wound has fully closed. The confusion stripped away what was not real. It revealed who stood by you when standing by you cost something. It showed you the geography of genuine love versus the topography of convenience. It compressed into you a quality of discernment that comfortable seasons never could have built. You were being prepared, not punished, prepared. If something in your chest is recognizing this right now, if some part of you is exhaling for the first time in a long time, drop the word clarity in the comments. Not as performance, not as participation in a trend, but as a marker, a small sacred acknowledgement between you and the part of yourself that has been holding on through every season of being misread, misrepresented, misunderstood, and is only now, in this moment, beginning to breathe again. And if this frequency is meeting you exactly where you needed to be met today, let that alignment be known. Press like, not for the algorithm, for the resonance, because what you choose to amplify is what you are choosing to call more of into your life. Long before this chapter began, before the confusion arrived, before the narrative slipped out of your hands, before the misunderstandings stacked themselves into something that felt immovable, there was a version of this moment already written, not in fate, not in the rigid, suffocating sense of a life with no agency, but in the way that all genuine healing has an arc. in the way that every soul who came here carrying real light also agreed, somewhere in the deepest level of their choosing, that the light would be tested before it was fully seen, that the gold would go through fire, that the truth would be buried before it was found, that the chosen one would, for a time, feel anything but chosen, and then, in the fullness of a timing that cannot be rushed, the revealing would come. This is that time. You do not need to do anything dramatic to receive what is being released right now. You do not need to announce yourself. You do not need to present evidence. You do not need to knock down the structures that were built on misunderstanding, brick by brick, with your own exhausted hands. You need only to stay. Stay present. Stay grounded in who you actually are. Stay rooted in the truth of yourself, even when, especially when, the version of you being discussed in other rooms looks nothing like the person you know yourself to be. What God is revealing does not need your help to emerge. It needs only your stillness, your trust, your willingness to let the unveiling happen without interference, knowing that what is being uncovered will not destroy you. It will position you. Before this confusion arrived, before the misunderstandings built themselves into walls you did not construct and could not explain your way out of, there was a truth about you that existed before any of this began. And here is what is sacred about truth. It does not require maintenance. It does not need to be watered or protected or defended with the energy of someone who is afraid it might die without their intervention. Truth simply is, and what simply is, cannot be permanently buried. Long before you had this body, before this particular chapter of your story was written, the soul you are understood something that the human version of you has been struggling to hold on to through every season of being misread. Concealment is not cancellation. What is hidden is not what is destroyed. What is questioned is not what is disproven. What is whispered about in rooms you were never invited into does not define the frequency you were built to carry. You were not silenced because you were wrong. You were silenced because the timing was not yet right for what you carry to be fully seen. There is a difference, and somewhere beneath the exhaustion of this season, beneath the weight of having held your dignity while others constructed a version of you that you barely recognized, you have always known that difference. The teachers who have gone deepest into the nature of the soul, who have sat with thousands of people in the quiet spaces between conscious and unconscious, and asked, "What do you know?" from the level that knows everything, they returned again and again with the same discovery. Nothing that belongs to a soul can be permanently taken from it. Not reputation, not clarity, not the truth of who they are. These things can be obscured. They can be delayed. They can be buried under layers of misunderstanding so thick that even the person themselves begins to question what is real. But they cannot be removed because they are not external possessions that can be stolen. They are frequencies. And a frequency, once established in a soul, waits patient as stone, quiet as deep water, waiting for the moment when the conditions are finally right for it to rise. That moment is now. Think about what it took to keep you quiet this long. Think about the discipline it required, the swallowing of words that deserved to be spoken, the choosing of peace over the satisfaction of being publicly right, the trusting that something larger than your own effort was moving on your behalf even when the evidence for that trust was invisible. That was not weakness. That was one of the most spiritually advanced things a human being can do. To hold your truth gently while the world handled it roughly. To remain recognizable to yourself while others drew a portrait of you in the wrong colors. To stay soft in places that had every reason to harden, you did that. And what God does with that kind of faithfulness is not small. What is being revealed right now is not just the correction of a narrative. It is the restoration of something sacred. Your identity, seen clearly, standing in its own light, requiring no amplification from you, because the truth itself has become loud enough to be heard. You don't need to announce the unveiling. You only need to be present for it. Stand where you have always stood, in the quiet center of who you actually are, and let what is real rise to the surface, the way light rises through water, effortlessly, inevitably, completely. What was hidden was never lost. It was held, and it is being returned to you now. There is a particular kind of pain that has no clean name. It is not grief exactly, not anger exactly. It lives somewhere between the two, in the hollow space that opens up inside a person when they realize that the version of them being discussed in the world bears almost no resemblance to who they actually are. You have lived inside that hollow space, perhaps for longer than anyone around you fully understood, carrying the weight of an identity that was assigned to you without your consent, watching a narrative move through the world with your name attached to it, knowing the truth, but understanding that some audiences had already decided before you opened your mouth, and still you remained, still here, still recognizable to yourself, still holding the thread of your own truth, even when everything outside was pulling in a different direction. That is not ordinary. Long before this lifetime, before this particular set of challenges was chosen, before this soul agreed to carry this specific quality of light into this specific time, there was an understanding in the deepest levels of spiritual wisdom that has echoed across every tradition that has ever looked clearly at how chosen souls move through the world. The ones who carry the most light will always attract the most misreading, not as punishment, not as cosmic unfairness, but because light, by its very nature, disturbs the comfortable darkness around it, because a soul operating at a frequency that others have not yet reached will always appear strange, threatening, or suspect to those still adjusting to the brightness. You were not misunderstood because something was wrong with you. You were misunderstood because something was right with you, and the world around you had not yet caught up to what that rightness looked like. God does not make mistakes in assignment. The soul that was placed inside your specific life, with your specific gifts, your specific wounds, your specific capacity to endure being misread without losing yourself, that was not random selection. That was precision. You were built for exactly this, not in the sense that suffering was your destiny, but in the sense that your soul arrived here with a resilience so deep, so quietly unshakable, that even this season, even this particular configuration of misunderstanding and silence and waiting could not reach the core of what you are. They could not touch the real you. They never could, because the real you exists at a level that human misrepresentation simply does not have access to. Tonight, before you sleep, try this. Sit in the quiet. Let the noise of every opinion that was never yours to carry fall away from you like a coat you were handed but never needed to wear. And ask yourself, not anxiously, not with the urgency of someone searching for proof, but with the gentle curiosity of someone who already knows the answer and simply wants to hear themselves say it. Who am I when no one is watching? Who am I when no one is deciding for me? Who am I beneath everything that was projected onto me? Let the answer rise, not from your mind, from somewhere deeper, from the part of you that has been holding your true identity safe through every season someone else tried to rewrite it. That part knows exactly who you are. It has never been confused. What God is revealing is not a new version of you. It is the original, the one that existed before the confusion, before the assumptions, before the silence that was mistaken for guilt and the grace that was mistaken for weakness. The original you, clear, grounded, true, is what is rising now. And no misunderstanding, however loudly it was spoken, however widely it was believed, however long it was allowed to stand unchallenged, can survive contact with the original truth. You were never what they said you were. You were always so much more. There is something the world does not teach you about being vindicated. It does not arrive the way you imagined it would in your most exhausted moments, loud, dramatic, undeniable, delivered in a way that forces every doubting voice to fall silent simultaneously. It arrives quietly, like morning, like the tide returning, like a season changing not in one dramatic moment, but in the gradual, inevitable accumulation of small, undeniable shifts, until one day you look around and realize everything is different now, and you did not have to destroy anything to get here. This is the part of the journey that tests the chosen ones most deeply, not the storm itself. The storm, as brutal as it was, at least gave you something to brace against, something to feel, something to respond to. The hardest part is this, the waiting space between when truth begins to move and when truth becomes visible, the in-between. The silence that follows the chaos but precedes the clarity, the place where everything in you wants to act, wants to speak, wants to do something, and the deepest wisdom available to you is simply, be still. Long before stillness was misread as passivity, before silence was confused with defeat, the most ancient understanding of how divine correction moves in a soul's life held this as its foundation. God works most powerfully in the spaces where human effort steps back, not because your effort has no value, but because there are corrections that human hands cannot make. There are reversals that human voices cannot accomplish. There are revelations that require a divine touch, and a divine touch moves freely only when it is not competing with your panic. Your stillness is not surrender. Your stillness is cooperation. It is the most advanced spiritual act available to you in this moment, the choosing of trust over reaction, of groundedness over noise, of presence over the desperate need to be immediately understood. Think about water, not the crashing of waves, though that has its power, but the deep, still water, the kind that reflects everything perfectly, the kind whose surface, when undisturbed, becomes a mirror so accurate it humbles the eye. That is what your stillness does right now. It creates a surface so clear, so undistorted by reaction and defense and the frantic energy of someone trying to control their own narrative, that the truth of who you are simply reflects, naturally, purely, without effort. You do not have to perform your innocence. You do not have to curate your image. You do not have to manage every perception held by every person who encountered the distorted version of your story. You only have to be so fully, so quietly, so unshakably yourself that the reflection speaks for itself. There is a peace available to you right now that does not make logical sense given your circumstances. That is how you know it is divine. Human peace is circumstantial. It arrives when things are resolved, when the confusion clears, when the voice is quiet. But the peace that God offers the chosen soul in the middle of the storm, before the resolution, before the vindication, before the full unveiling, that peace passes understanding. It holds you not because everything is fine, but because everything is handled. Step into that peace tonight, not by pretending the journey has not been hard, not by bypassing the very real weight of what you have carried, but by choosing consciously, deliberately, as an act of profound spiritual trust, to release the outcome into hands that have never once dropped what they were entrusted with. Your truth is in those hands, and those hands do not lose things. Stillness is not the absence of strength. It is strength in its most refined form, distilled down to its purest expression. The warrior who no longer needs to fight because they have finally understood that the battle was never theirs to win through force. It was theirs to win through faith. Stay still, chosen one. What is coming does not need your help to arrive. It only needs you to be standing, calm, rooted, undisturbed. When it does, you have arrived at the other side of something, not the other side of the storm exactly, though the storm is passing, not the other side of the pain, though the pain is lifting, but the other side of the version of yourself that needed external validation to feel secure in who you are. That version served its purpose. It carried you through the seasons where the confusion was loudest, where the misrepresentation was most aggressive, where the gap between who you knew yourself to be and who the world was deciding you were felt wide enough to fall into, and you did not fall. You are here, steady, recognizable to yourself, still holding the thread. That is everything. There is a law written not in any book, but in the fabric of how divine truth moves through human experience. What God reveals, no one can conceal, not permanently, not completely, not in the ways that matter. Human hands can delay a revelation. Human voices can complicate a narrative. Human systems can slow the arrival of clarity, but they cannot stop it. They have never been able to stop it, because truth does not operate within the limitations of human power. It operates at a frequency that human resistance simply cannot sustain indefinitely. Every attempt to bury what is real only compresses it further. And compressed truth, when it finally releases with a force proportional to everything that tried to hold it down. Long before this moment, in the quiet spaces between lifetimes, where the soul reviews what it has carried and what it has learned, this season was already understood. Not as tragedy, not as punishment, as initiation, the kind that only the souls trusted with real assignments are ever asked to walk through. The kind that strips away every false layer until what remains is so purely, so undeniably real that nothing, not misunderstanding, not misrepresentation, not the loudest voices in the most crowded rooms, can cast a shadow over it again. You have been initiated, and what emerges from genuine initiation is not the same soul that entered it. It is a clearer one, a deeper one, a soul that has discovered, through the most personal and irrefutable kind of evidence, that it cannot be destroyed by what does not belong to it. Tonight, in the stillness before sleep carries you, place both hands over your heart. Feel the steadiness beneath your palms. That rhythm that kept going through every season of confusion, every night of uncertainty, every morning you woke up and had to choose again to remain faithful to the truth of yourself. And breathe into this. It is done. What needed to be revealed is being revealed. What needed to be restored is being restored. I do not need to carry this any further than this moment. I release it. I trust it. I receive the peace that was always waiting on the other side of this. Let that land not as words, but as medicine, because that is what it is. What is being positioned in your life right now is not a consolation prize for what you endured. It is the direct result of who you chose to be while you were enduring it. Every moment you chose dignity over retaliation. Every moment you chose silence over noise. Every moment you chose trust over the desperate need to control how your story was being told. Those moments were being recorded, not by human witnesses, by something far more reliable, and what was recorded is now being reflected back into your life as alignment, as open doors, as the quiet but unmistakable sensation that the ground beneath you is finally solid again. You are not starting over. You are stepping forward, cleaner, clearer, more fully yourself than you have ever been, into everything that was always meant for you. You did not find this transmission by accident. Something in you sought this out. Some frequency in you recognized another frequency and moved towards it, because the part of you that knows what you need is always wiser than the part of you that is afraid. That wisdom brought you here. Let it continue to lead you. If this channel has become a space where something in you remembers what it already knew, where the noise quiets and the truth rises, and you leave way feeling more like yourself than when you arrived, then stay. Not as a subscriber in the hollow sense, but as a soul choosing to continue its own remembering. Every transmission here is another thread, another frequency, another gentle return to the truth that was never lost, only waiting. What God reveals, no one can conceal. What is yours cannot be taken. What is true will always, always rise. You are chosen, you are seen, you are being restored. Welcome to your next chapter.